Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents and families everywhere.
Whether you have kids that plan to attend college or you have current college students, you want them in and you want them to graduate.
And you want a quality education that you can afford. I am Mark Stucker.
And I am Anika Madden, and it is Thursday, March 1st, and we are on episode number 5. In this week's show in the news, we're going to cover an article that doubts the importance of college visits. And we're at chapter 5 and 171 answers. And we share how our kids can find what a typical day is like and the jobs that they are considering. And our question comes from a mom who wants to know what the importance of high school course selections will be when being evaluated in the admissions process. We want to take a moment to send our sincere condolences to the families and the community that lost loved ones in the recent tragic shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. Please know that we are lifting each of you up in our thoughts and our prayers.
Yeah, Anika, I just experienced the full range of emotions this week. I mean, I used to be pretty dispassionate and or placid in my demeanor, but now I don't know, as I get older, I'm just sappy and I can't watch it without tears kind of rolling down my cheeks. And, I put something up on social media from Arne Duncan, the former Secretary of Education under Obama. And he made a quote that I just thought was powerful, where he said that we value and love our guns more than we love these kids, and something has to change. Let's turn to college admissions hot topics in the news.
Okay, our article this week, Mark, is coming from Mr. John Roseman in the Tribune News, and it's entitled "College Visitations Become a Waste of Time." So before we go totally in on this, Mark, I'm just gonna say a couple of things. Let me just say I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that we probably agree that we disagree with this gentleman, but we also agree that there are some actually pretty significant positive points in here, and I'm going to let you bring those out. But before you do that, let me just say, let's give the audience, let's just let them know what it's all about, right? That's kind of critical. So it's about this guy who has this daughter. She's a junior in high school. She's getting ready to go off, she's looking at all these colleges and she wants to make visitations. And her parents are totally dead set against doing that because, they feel like they went off to school. They didn't do college visits. They feel like it's a pointless waste of time. What do you think, Mark?
Well, it's funny because sometimes you have a certain reaction to an article, and if you just let it simmer and distill for a while, you kind of have a slightly different reaction. At first, when I read this, I felt like throwing something at my laptop. I really did. I was like, what?
I think I did throw something. I'm sorry.
I was like, what is this dude's deal? But the more I thought about it, I think there's something everybody can learn from this article. It's not what he actually says, it's what he's actually reacting against. And so he doesn't. So here's the, you're supposed to all look for something positive, right? Find the silver lining in the cloud.
That's right. That's right.
When I looked at that article, this article from that vantage point, I came up with 3 things that are pretty positive. And so I want to share my thoughts and see what you think.
Okay.
Just off the internet, there's so much important information that you can learn. Some of the most important things I've found that influence whether or not a student decides to go to a college are things that can be found by internet research. For example, what courses does a school offer? How far is it away from home? Is it more of a city environment, suburban environment, rural environment? What's the student body? What's the composition and makeup of the student body? And what are you looking for? What about the admissions criteria? Do I meet the admissions criteria? What is the reputation of the school? What is the experience other students have had to attend this school? And then obviously for most people, this college is pretty expensive. What is my financial aid package and can I afford to attend? So all of those things can really be gleaned off of internet research. And I totally believe that most people do not do enough of that before they embark on this whole visit, fly across the country kind of process I see a lot of people do. So to the extent to which he calls attention to that, I think that that's a positive. What do you think about what I said? Do you agree with that?
I totally agree. I totally agree. Let me just add another positive before we go in.
Yeah, because we will go in.
So what he said is that they're costly. And I do know of a parent that went on a college visit who she already knew that they weren't going to that college, but they felt the need to go anyway. Now, if you got it like that, okay. Even if you do got it like that, why? So I agree in that context of, these things, they you got to pay for gas, you got to flight, whatever, however your, whatever your means are. And for something that you may or may not attach yourself to. So Mark, if you don't mind, let's just go ahead and go in on them.
Well, so, I got a little some more positives. I got to share. I want to be fair to him. But I want to agree with you. I know you're dying to do that. We're going to give you your shot. But I first of all, I want to underscore your point about cost. I mean, it can be thousands, and a lot of times, what's really bad is a lot of times you're visiting schools that you may not even be a competitive applicant for. Like I constantly have to talk to people out of visiting schools because they're not a competitive applicant there. Or I know what the family tells me they can afford, and I know there's no way that school is giving you that financial aid package. So that's one thing. Your point about cost, especially a cost coupled with a bad match. And I thought another point he made, which was really important, was one thing I did like is that he did emphasize the fact that this should mostly be a student-driven process.
Okay.
And that's something every college would be singing the Hallelujah chorus and amening and high-fiving him to death on, because that's one thing that colleges want to see is they want to see, I always say student is driving the bus, the parent is in the passenger seat. And I have to tell parents that a lot because that's just kind of hard for them. and
it's hard for me. It's hard for me to hear you say that.
So at least you're being honest. And so there was one quote that he said here, about students driving the process and how they need to drive the process. And, in the style that he uses, he goes overboard. But I still thought he still made a good point. So here's what he said. He said, I advise simply telling teens to research the colleges that interest them and go through the application process on their own. It's a topic for another column, but my gut feeling is that if a young person can't fill out their college application without mommy and daddy's help, isn't college material in the first place. Like,
I feel the mommy rising in me, Mark. Oh my goodness.
I mean, he's his style, he's abrasive. Like he says, isn't college material in the first place. But at the same time, he does emphasize the student should be driving the process. So those are my positives.
Okay. And I'll take that. And I totally, and let me just reinforce, I totally agree. However, I do see this as a partnership because it's not just about your child going off to college. It's your family. You're still, believe it or not, parents, students, whoever's listening, this is a partnership. And I don't care, I know that we tend to let our kids go at some point. Oh, they're a certain age. Oh, they're off on their own. No. This is a partnership all the way through and through. And I totally believe that. And I will fight that to the total end. And so let's just go in on what I totally disagree with him is that he really belittles the college visitation process as a step away from helicopter parenting. And
actually,
again,
Anika, he used the term, if I remember correctly, when he said Quizzentine parenting, he said it's one step worse than helicopter parenting.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting that because I was being nice, right?
Well, but I mean, I think the part that's bad is it's like you said, it's how he defines it, right? So he takes the perspective that a parent wanting to go with their child on a college visit is being a meddlesome parent who's way out in left field and overstepping their boundaries. And I do agree with that. It's a partnership. While it's true that the student, I say the student, when I say the student is driving the bus, that doesn't mean there's not restrictions and parameters and barriers that parents still need to impose, right? Like you're not going to let your kid just, run over the bridge, right? And you're not going to let them go in onerous debt that will saddle them for decades. So there are limitations that on the student driving the process, and he doesn't seem to acknowledge that either.
Well, dear Mr. Roseman, here's what I have to tell you. This is a huge commitment, right? This isn't just about us going to the next middle school, and those are huge commitments too, as I say that out loud. But there is something significant. There's something valid in terms of really connecting with the institution that you're about to spend the next 4 years of your life with, and not just about the student, the parent. We're still involved. We're still a part of this process, but let's just focus on the student at this point. There is value in making a personal connection when you step foot on that campus. I know that because I've done that, and I know the distinction when you hit a campus that you don't connect with.
And probably,
let me just say it that way.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest objections I had to his article, is he acknowledges what I call the science part of admissions, right? Learning the stats, the facts, the figures, and all that. And I acknowledge most people don't do enough of that. But there's also an art to admission, and he doesn't understand that. He doesn't understand that at all. And when I'm explaining this to people, I like to compare it to, I have a couple illustrations. Can I share them?
Yeah, sure.
So the first one I like to compare it to is dating. And so everybody has in their mind their ideal of the perfect girl or guy, right? So let's say it's a lady and she's like, okay, I like my guys tall, I like I'm dark, I like I'm handsome, I like I'm smart, I like I'm rich. And
I like the eyebrows. I like the lips.
There you go. Throw in some other variables, and so that's your thing. It's your criteria. If the way he understands the visitation process, it's not necessary. If everything lines up, then it'd be like just going on a blind date. No, not just a blind date. It'd be like marrying somebody blind, right? Marrying them blind because they have your features. But no. You need to go on a date, and the date is your visit. And if there's no chemistry on the date, you're not going to go on a date with a guy who had all your features. And when you go there and it's just blah, and you're not going to say, well, he had my stats, he had my features, so I'm ready to say I do. And that's basically what he's advocating for, which is crazy. Right. The other illustration that I like to use is purchasing a home. So, you could go on realtor.com or Georgia. They've got Georgia Metro, Georgia MLS, and find the house you like and it looks perfect, your dream home. But you would never not say, hey, realtor, we need to do a test drive. We need to drive around the neighborhood. We need to walk, we need to kick the tires, and we need to walk in the house.
That's right.
The community, you would never do that. And the reason why I like that example is because you kind of are picking your home away from home for 4 years.
That's right.
And what he says, I have it here, what he says about the feeling part of it, he just completely dismisses that totally, as something that's completely invalid. I have it here. He says, a mom recently told me after she and her daughter visited 10 colleges during her junior year, the daughter decided to go to such and such college. When I asked her the basis for her daughter's decision, the mother answered, she said she just got a good feeling when she was there. And then he says, a good feeling? I felt like screaming. You got to be kidding me. What I would say is if you didn't do all that other stuff, like the research and making sure, it lined up with your curriculum and location and cost, then if it was exclusively feeling, but not if you've done all the other stuff and it lines up, you need to trust that. I teach people, trust the gut feeling you have when you walk on the campus. A campus is like a magnet, is either drawing you in or repelling you. You may not even be able to identify what it is about you that's repelled or that's attractive, but you need to learn to trust that. And he has no respect for that at all. Zero, zilch, nada. And so those are my biggest things. But you see, I told you I was going to go in on them when I started. There's another thing to think about. So there are schools that look at demonstrated interest and their evaluation, and schools that look at demonstrated interest. When I say demonstrated interest, you know what that means. You want to explain what demonstrated interest is, Anika?
Well, it's basically is indicating to the college that you show interest in them. Yes, I do actually click on your links when you send them to me. Yes, I do actually attend the orientations that you invite me to. It's showing them because they want to trust that, if they extend an offer to you, that you are actually considering it.
Yeah. So schools are trying to have the lowest acceptance rate while at the same time admitting the most talented group of kids, especially selective schools. So they have no interest in you just seeing them as some backup that you have no interest in. We're going to go into this in other episodes in major detail because it's one thing people don't understand how important it is. But for schools that look at demonstrated interest, single biggest factor that they will look at is whether or not you visited the school. Now, especially if you know the school's not that far away. Like if I know a school, they tell me, Mark, if you're within 150 miles, you don't visit us. That's a major blemish on your application to us. So if it's in California and you're on the East Coast, you'll get a little slack, but you also lose the ability to not only discern if the school's a match, but also to signal to the school that you have interest in them. So that's why overall, what would you give this? What would you give this article? I'm gonna make you a teacher. Give him a grade.
I would give him an A for entertainment. I'm gonna give you a C- for content, Mr. Roseman.
Give him a D for content. No. And I'm gonna give him an A- for raising my blood pressure.
Love it. Now it's time for our step-by-step walkthrough of the college admissions process.
Okay, so we are in chapter 5 of our course. This is our college admissions course. So going through the book, 171 answers, and we're in that section on majors and careers, which we'll stay in for 5 more weeks. And then we're going to transition and we're going to spend the next 18 weeks talking about how to build the college list. And then we'll spend the next 65 episodes talking about all the different things you can do to get in the schools. And then our next 70 episodes will deal with paying for college without going broke. And then we'll have 8 more episodes dealing with staying in and graduating. So in this particular episode, in trying to discern if you're selecting the right major or career, we talk about how important it is to know what a typical day is like. So you don't get out and think you got the most exciting job in the world. And you go there and you're like, oh my goodness. So you want to share your impressions of the chapter and what you learned and what have I
done? Yeah, so I am going to use Miss Janaea, my child, my second born, again for this example, because Mark, I'm going to tell you, when I read this chapter, so we're always doing these group chapters with our family. I'm group chapters. Look at me. We're always doing these group texts with our family. And when I read this and we were talking about our episodes, I was like, oh my God, schedule your calendars. It's time to talk.
Good.
And the reason why I say that is because Janaea wants to be a veterinarian. Y'all have heard that before. You're going to hear it more of it, right? And what the Occupational Outlook Handbook does, and this is, again, our awesome resource that we're using to talk about today, is that it literally describes in every detail what that child can expect when it gets on that job, when he or she gets on that job. So Janaea wants to be a vet. And when I put in veterinarian again, I did the search engine, right? And I looked down the list. What do they do? It talks about the work environment, the educational requirements. I mean, it is in depth, like to like crazy. So I looked down the list, Mark, and I see that veterinarians are responsible for euthanizing animals.
True.
And when I tell you, Janaea's face just popped in my head immediately, like, oh my God. Because up until this point, because it's all about the cute animals. Oh my God, I'm going to take care of these animals. I'm going to make them healthy and it's going to be great. And we're going to have it. So the point is that the big takeaway from this, Mark, that we thank you so much for again and again, is that it gives these kids a real time, a real life view into what they're getting into. It's not all about the money. It's not all about the glamour and the cute animals and how great it's going to be. It's about the long hours. It's about the emotional toll that can potentially take on the person that's doing this job. Going back to the veterinarian, Janaea is an outdoor person, but again, this is just something that it outlines in that she could be doing these emergency procedures outside in inclement weather on this remote farm. I mean, it goes into that level of detail. And going back to the euthanization of the animals, I know she's never talked about that. has she ever thought about that? Now, I will tell you, Mark, that we did have the conversation. We had the group text. We had the call. And I said, Janaea, did you see that? Like, we literally, like, I was like, okay, Janaea, we're going to do you first. You know, Jalen's on, Janaea's on, Javon's on. I said, Janaea, we're going to do you first. And I'm like excited about her going down the list. And I said, did you see the euthanization point of? She was like, yeah, I knew that. And can I tell you that I was kind of thrown off a little bit?
Your whole plan came down like a deck of cards.
It did. But at the same time, I was pleased and disappointed at the same time, right? But the point is that I really needed her to see that. And I was excited that she said that, but I still had my own little personal enjoyment.
It shows that she has put a little research in and she's doing something on her own.
That was the excitement. That was the silver lining in the cloud for me, because I was like, oh, you did your research. Look at you. But the point is that even had she not seen that, it wasn't that I was going to use this to say, oh my God, you're going to have to euthanize animals. Look at something else. It just gives them this realistic view into what they're going to be dealing with. And this Outlook handbook, Mark, is off the charts. I just cannot believe how in-depth detail this is for our kids to understand what they're getting into. And I know you talk all the time about all these, these adults that, that are doing these jobs that they just don't like, and they weren't expecting.
I think adults can actually probably relate to this conversation well, because adults either have gone through the experience of multiple, oftentimes career switches because they were in unfulfilling jobs, or they realized that they switched their major multiple times in college because they didn't really know what they were getting into.
Right.
And it's just, listen, it's not. It won't guarantee that you still may not make a change, but we're just trying to reduce the disappointment of either getting out into an unfulfilling career or doing what so many students do, which is switch majors deep into the process, and then they have to stay, an extra year or so because they need all these other credits. And so, it just pays to do your homework up front. And this, and this chapter shows one more way where you can do it when it comes to learning what the typical day is like. And what I love to do, I love schools, that have co-op programs. Are you familiar with co-op programs at all?
I am. I actually had quite a few friends that did co-ops when I was in school.
To our listeners about that?
Yeah. So basically, it's like you take a semester and you go off to a company and you do the job. Like you get a real time experience on the job as though you were a full time employee, and that really gives you a sense of, hey, do I want to do this or not? So I guess the big question is, at what point do I do that? Honestly, Mark, those thousands of years ago, I can't remember at what stage those.
Like you're so old.
I am, Mark, and I'm accepting it. I'm embracing it.
Well, there's different co-op models, and some of them have one co-op experience, some have two, some have three. And then usually last a full semester, 4 months sometimes, but I just love those programs because you get to see the job, exactly what it's like. And a lot of times people switch majors after that. But this is the step before that, which is learning about it, and then figuring out if you want to move on. So
that's right. And I'm going to go so far to say, Mark, my very close friend that I'm thinking about that actually did the co-op, she's going to correct me if I'm wrong, but she did switch her major. She did, in fact, switch her major after she did that semester on that job. So, yeah. There it is. And I'll tell you, this technology is just so off the charts now. Back in the day, it was, it's real time experience, but we can get a little glimpse even before that. Just the reality around this is just, the reality is priceless.
Time for a question from our listeners.
Okay, Mark, our question this week comes from Miss Gwen in Washington, D.C., and her question is two-pronged. So the first part is, how will a student's course selection in high school factor into how they are assessed in the admissions process? And would you recommend a student take extremely challenging advanced courses and risk getting a B or C grade, or should they take standard courses to ensure that they get all A's? What do you think?
Well, first of all, thank you, Gwen, for asking this question, because so many people are like waiting for this answer. Anyone who's done college counseling for 1 year has had this question asked multiple times. It normally comes in this form. Is it better to get an A in a regular class or a B in an advanced class, or a B in an advanced or a C in a regular. That's normally how it's posed. And this is just another form of that. So the bottom line is that it depends on the student. And let's talk about why this question is really important and how I would like for our listeners to think about this question. So I think about it in three different ways. The first is let's talk about just the pure admissions component to it. So what will help you get in? Let's just talk about that and isolate that factor for a second. So the first thing that I want students and parents to know is that every school is different. So some schools use what's referred to as a weighted GPA, and some schools use an unweighted GPA. Do you know the difference between those two, Anika?
Yeah, Mark, I'm going to be honest. I did it one time, but I totally forgot. But let me take a stab at it. So the weighted GPA means that you have taken advanced courses, and so it's like a different scale that they use because you've taken the advanced course. Just help me out, Mark, because I feel like I'm about to go astray here.
You're doing pretty well. So GPA, of course, is an acronym for grade point average, right? So it takes your grades and computes them into a numerical number. So what the weighted GPA means is that extra points or weight is being given to your GPA because you took more advanced classes.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. And an unweighted GPA means that if let's say one student took AP history and another student took regular history, an A is an A, a B is a B, a C is a C, there's no difference. So so first of all, students need to find out from a GPA perspective, is the school looking at a weighted or an unweighted GPA? And while you would think every school looks at a weighted GPA, because how in the world could you equate an honors to a regular class or an AP to a regular class? There are quite a few schools that actually do that, which surprises me. And I think that's atrocious admission practice, but hey, they can do what they want. I'm not running their school. And so the first thing is a school looking at a weighted or unweighted GPA? And how do they factor rigor into the evaluation process? That's the first thing. Having said that, if you are looking at highly selective schools, the academic rigor that a student has will be arguably the single biggest factor that will influence whether or not they are admitted. Now, I say arguably because, every school is different. Some schools can put more emphasis on test scores and other things. But what I can tell you, and I encourage all of you out there to Google something, which is just a phenomenal resource. It's called the NACAC State of College Admissions. It's an annual survey that is done with all the college admissions offices in the country. I mean, not everybody fills it out, but hundreds of schools fill it out every year. And it asks them every year all kinds of super interesting things. And every single year, high grades and rigorous courses comes in number one. So what that tells you is that if you're looking at going to a competitive school, they are absolutely looking at rigor. Now, one thing we share in common, Nika, you're in North Carolina, I'm here in Atlanta, but we both have students at Davidson College. And I have been listening to Davidson's presentation for 18 years, going to hotels. It's the same thing. They always talk about the 5 things they look for in order, and it hasn't changed. Number one is always how you perform in the most rigorous courses. And they're serious about it. I mean, I've had multiple conversations with their admission office. Absolutely are going to pass over the student that chose to go the easy route because they know that they're harder than your high school curriculum. And they'll take a look at your ability to handle higher level work as an indication of whether you can handle their work. They'll also use it as an indication of whether or not you take the lazy way out or you're self-motivated, whether you're confident enough to do it. So for highly competitive selective colleges, academic rigor is very, very, very important. So the first thing that I want to say. However, I always encounter parents from, every year there's parents I work with who have heard how important rigor is, students as well. And so they feel as if either themselves, the child, or the parent feels their child has to be in these advanced classes. And here's the thing, you need to be in there if you're going to do well in there. And sometimes I have to almost like arm wrestle with some people I work with because they're insisting that their child be in these classes that they are not doing well in. And I can assure you, just taking rigorous classes and not excelling is not going to get you in a selective school. So that's
you might want to say that one more. Mark, can you say that one more time?
I can assure you, just taking rigorous classes and not doing well in them will not get you in a highly selective school. Now, when I say that, some people freak out because they have a B and 1B and they think 1B is the kiss of death. And I'm not saying that either. I mean, the harder the school is to get in, the more they're scrutinizing everything. So there are schools that when you're asked them the question, is it better to get an A in advanced or an A in a regular or B in advanced? They say, get an A in the advanced. That's usually what MIT and Yale say. So, so that's one thing. Another point I want to make about rigor is that rigor is not all courses are looked at equally. So, so if I say to you, Anika, what are the core courses? What would you say the core courses are? See, put you on the spot here. There's 5 of them.
No, that's cool. So I'm going to go with math, English, science.
Yes.
Can I put foreign language in there?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, one more. Oh,
you're going to be mad if you don't get this one.
Oh, wait. Oh, I said math, English, science, foreign language. Oh, I'm killing myself.
I'm counting to 3 and then you're out of time. 1, 2, 3.
I've given up.
English.
I've given up.
English. So
I said English, Mark. Didn't I say English?
No. You said math, science. Oh, did you say English? Then you didn't say history.
I think
then you didn't say history.
History.
Okay.
It was history.
Okay.
It was
history.
Okay.
Yeah. So history. So those are the 5, and it's important to know that those classes are called core classes, sometimes called solid classes, and those classes will be prioritized in the evaluation. So a lot of schools will recalculate your GPA based on your core GPA. And so those 5. So that's important for you to know. Now, but highly selective schools like the Davidsons, the Vanderbilts, the Georgetowns, the Stanfords, those kind of schools, they want to see that you have taken rigorous courses, you've done well, and that you've done it across multiple core courses. So you can't just load up on 3 or 4 AP history classes because you're great at history and not take advanced classes in other disciplines and think you're getting in those courses. You're not. And so they're looking for you to come close to maxing out the curriculum or certainly getting to advanced levels in the most selective schools want to see it in 4 out of those 5 disciplines. But so that's important to know. And then the other thing that's important to know about how your rigor is evaluated is it's also evaluated in the context of what your declared major is. So what do you think I mean by that?
Okay. So basically, if I want to be a scientist, I should demonstrate that I've taken certain advanced courses in science.
Yes.
That's my best shot.
Exactly. Exactly. So if you say your whole application, you want to be a creative writer, and then you haven't taken anything in curriculum wise to show you do well in English classes, or you want to be an engineer and you're getting algebra 2, I mean, you don't even get to pre-calc. A lot of school, depending on the school, there's schools, if you're, a lot of highly selective schools want you to get to calculus. If you're declaring yourself as a math major, you better do well in those classes. So you'll be evaluated in the context of the major that you declare as well as in your core classes. So that's a little bit about the admission side. Any questions on that, or should we transition to the second part?
Well, I just want to clarify, but that still varies from school to school. Absolutely. It's not that. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. And I'm really glad that you said that, because this conversation we're talking about here, this is really mostly for schools that accept less than 40% of their applicants. So Anika, do you want to transition to the second factor to consider, or do you have any comments or questions at all about the admission criteria?
No, I think we're great on the admissions. And I know that we're about to start into mental health.
Yeah. So that would be the second point. The second point would be what I call, can you have balanced excellence in your life? And I just so love that term. I stole it from Holy Innocents Episcopal School here in Atlanta. That's their motto is balanced excellence. And so it's just really, really important, right? Because you're not just a mind, you're a full person. And so just let's talk about one category. Your physical fitness, that matters, right? Getting exercise, that matters. Eating right matters. Getting enough sleep is really important. I'm just coming to appreciate that. I don't know if you saw that article from Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, what he said about sleep, but I have it here. He said 8 hours of sleep makes a big difference for me, and I try hard to make that a priority. For me, that's the needed amount to feel energized and excited. And he goes on to say he'll have decision fatigue if he doesn't do that. And when I have decision fatigue, choices become harder and the day goes on and I'm not serving my company well. And I was just reading an article earlier today, actually, Anika, about sleep. And then listen to what it says. It goes on to say not getting adequate sleep can lead to cardiovascular disease, heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, musculoskeletal disorders like arteriosclerosis, and some cancers. So there's the health component, right? So you're a balanced person. So that's important. And then you also have to have a social life. Like that's not fluff. That's important. Like it's important for your well-being. And it's also important to be refining your social skills. Any adult knows, you get your jobs based on who you know. So you should be building your network, getting better at relationships. That's important. Having fun is important, releasing that energy. And then just having a healthy emotional life. And then the important people in your life, like your family and your friends. And so I understand that there are seasons in life and sometimes you are going to stay up super late and maybe even pulling all nighter. Like there's times you're going to just be imbalanced for short periods of time, but you really can't be like that for a whole 9 months in a year because you're going to crash and some other components of your life are going to suffer so much that it's just not worth it. And when working with a student and they're going through all this, not to mention anxiety and depression, we didn't even talk about that. I have to say, you know what? It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. And let's look at taking a curriculum that will allow you to have balanced excellence. And it may mean that you don't get in to that school that you had in mind. But guess what? You'll have a fine life going to a different school and you'll have a great college experience. Don't fixate on this one school you think you got to get in. So any thoughts at all on the mental health balanced excellence part?
I mean, just how critical it is because, and I think about this for myself, and I'm sure other moms and dads have too. We get so fixated on our own health, trying to lose weight and trying to be healthy and our mental health that we neglect our kids in that regard. So a lot of times, because I look at John like, oh my God, I got to exercise him more. Like, I just, we get so consumed with ourselves. We forget that these are real time experiences for our kids too, that we've really got to be paying attention to. Like it's important for them to be healthy, period. We get caught up in our diets and all that stuff. It just needs to be said, Mark.
Yes. That's all I really appreciate it. Michelle Obama, she put such a focus on this in her time, in the White House. It just, we have a childhood obesity dilemma right now. And that's just only one component of it. So there's that side of it, the mental health, the balanced excellence. And then the third component that I would say would be, what is it that will prepare you to excel when you get in college? So let me give you an example. Tell you a student I'm working with now, and how I applied this. So, very, very strong, high achieving student, doing really well, and she gets to her final semester of her senior year, and she's like, "Hey, Mark, can I drop calculus? And it's really, it's taking a lot of my time." And, life would be easier for me if I didn't have calculus right now. I'm juggling a lot of balls. So, of course, I'm working with her closely. So I determined that it wasn't to such an extreme level that the mental health side needed to come in. It was more, it's just really challenging. And I'd rather not expend this much time on something that's this challenging. But here's the thing. She wants to go in and be a doctor. And so math and science are going to be really important for her. And she's going to get calculus at the next level. And she's already in super highly competitive schools. And so it's sort of better for her to bear it now and get in there and everybody else has had it and she hasn't, and she's dying. So there, so all these things are about finding the right balance, but that is the third component, is what will prepare me better for college. And that's just something that has to be factored in. So that's how my take on that question.
Well, can I add my own personal take on that? Because Jalen, he wants to go into anesthesiology, and he did get to that point where he's like, man, I'm tired of working hard. Like, dang, can I take a break? And so he now understands how critical, he's a junior now, we're about to go into senior year, and he now gets it. Like, oh my gosh, like he is, he would have died had he not continued to challenge himself, because that's the belly of the beast. That's, you got to, and it goes back to understanding the end goal. When we talked about the occupational outlook handbook, is that this is the reality of the job. This is what you got to understand, that this is what it takes. And when it comes into that rigor and that challenge, people underestimate the value in that. And that it's really training our kids to not just get their mind right, but to be really prepared for specific roles that they're going after.
Yeah.
So I just can't emphasize that enough, how important. I mean, just living through that personally. I totally get that.
I do have to say that I'm really proud of the student I was telling you about, because she said, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to quit.
Awesome.
And that's also another component of that as well, too, is I don't like to see students get in the habit of quitting and folding like a cheap tent as soon as they encounter some resistance.
That's right.
Not to say she was doing that, but just that's a really bad habit. As soon as it gets done, I got to transfer. I got to drop this. Because, that's the same person that quit every job, quit every relationship they're in. And, you're starting to build some habits now. So getting that toughening up, getting that grit, getting that perseverance, there is value there. But
oh my God, extreme value.
I guess like all this stuff, though, there really is balance. Because I talked to another student I work with who's a freshman in college, and she was going through some tough times. And it made sense for her to drop a class in a particular instance. So I'm never saying that you never drop a class, right? If it's to such an extreme that it is overwhelming you, there are times that's the judicious move as well.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Awesome, Mark. Thank you. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. And if you find this podcast helpful, it would help us tremendously if you would subscribe, rate us, and write reviews of your college-bound kid on iTunes or your favorite podcast listening app. And most importantly, we want you to spread the word. The amazing music that you hear is by Victor Allen Weeks. Artwork is by Elaine Aguilar. Marketing designs by Kimberly Blass. And Your College-Bound Kid is produced by Esteban Sartho.
And if you have a question or a few questions that you would like for us to answer, please email us at collegeboundquestion@gmail.com. That's collegeboundquestion@gmail.com. Every week, we'll select one question and answer it in each episode. To get a copy of the book, 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions, please visit 171answers.com. That's the number 171answers.com. We look forward to you tuning in again next week.